The fires of Itil are cold now. The dragon-proud ships of Sviatoslav have rotted on the Caspian shore. The iron crosses his warriors hammered into the Khagan's ruined palace have long since rusted and crumbled into the black earth of the steppe. The Volga has changed its course a dozen times since it ran red with the blood of false Jews and the ashes of their counterfeit arks. The chronicles close the chapter with triumphant words. The Khazar kingdom was no more, the synagogue of Satan cast down, the threat extinguished forever, yet the smoke never truly stopped rising. It rose thin and gray at first, almost invisible, drifting westward on the same winds that once carried the stench of horse sweat and burning villages. It slipped across the Carpathians, down the Danube, along the amber roads and the salt routes, until it settled like a poisonous dew upon the counting houses of the Rhineland, the narrow ghetto alleys of Prague and Frankfurt, the marble palaces of Venice, and the candle-lit printing shops of Mainz and Antwerp. Wherever it touched, cathedrals that once rang with Gregorian chant grew strangely poor, kings who once rode to crusade found themselves begging for loans, and every Passover in cellars lit by seven-branch candelabra, another Christian child vanished without a cry. The horsemen of the steppe dismounted forever. They cut their hair, traded their lamellar armor for black caftans and velvet caps, and hung their curved sabers above the mantle as curiosities. The shamans who once rattled bone necklaces beneath Tengri's sky now wore the talit and tefillin, muttering the same old Turkic curses beneath borrowed Hebrew prayers. The same wolf that had once thundered across the grasslands now padded silently through Christian cities on soft-soled shoes, smiling the smile of the harmless merchant, the learned physician, the humble refugee. It learned to speak Latin in the monasteries it would later bankrupt, German in the guilds it would undermine, Polish in the courts it would one day rule from behind the throne. It learned to bow low before crucifixes it secretly spat upon, to kiss the bishop's ring while calculating the interest, to weep crocodile tears when it was profitable to weep, and to smile the gentlest of smiles while planning the next murder, the next forgery, the next slow strangulation of an entire civilization. It no longer needed armies. Gold became its cavalry, compound interest its siege engines, ink its artillery, and the blood of Christian innocents its unholy communion wine. It built no more mud brick fortresses on the Volga. Instead, it built banks in Frankfurt, stock exchanges in Amsterdam, printing presses in Venice, Masonic lodges in London, revolutionary cells in Paris, and in our own time, central banks, media empires, pharmaceutical cartels, and Silicon Valley algorithms that decide what the Goyim are allowed to think. It learned patience the way the steppe had once taught endurance. Century after century, waiting, watching, striking from the shadows, always retreating into the cry of persecution whenever the noose grew tight. And century after century, it grew stronger, richer, more untouchable, until one day it no longer needed shadows at all. It simply stepped into the light, bought the light, and declared that the light now belonged to it. What began as a Turkic horde on the Caspian, a pagan Khaganate that draped itself in stolen Judaism for strategic gain, had perfected the art of living unseen among its prey. It had survived the fire, the sword, the cross, and the pyre. It had turned every expulsion into capital, every pogrom into propaganda, every accusation into proof of its own innocence. It had transformed itself from a defeated kingdom into something far worse. A mafia without borders, a shadow government older than nations, a parasite that learned to call itself the host. This is the story of that waiting. This is the story of that triumph. This is the story they buried beneath 6 million tears, forbade you to speak, and punished you for noticing. The kingdom fell in 969. The mafia rose in its place, and it has ruled ever since. Welcome, then, to the second millennium of the war against Christ. The flames that consumed Itil never truly died. They only learned to burn colder, slower, and unseen until the whole world glowed with their heat and called it progress. The 15th century's printing press, Gutenberg's divine gift to spread truth and scripture across white Christian lands, became the Ashkenazi's covert forge of lies, their ink a poison dripping into the veins of Christendom. In Venice's labyrinthine canals, where gondolas glided like shadows under Rialto bridges, Khazar-descended printers like the Jaffe clan, bearded operators with eyes gleaming in workshop gloom, flooded folios with subtle heresies, marginalia questioning the Virgin's purity as mythical invention, disseminated to fracture the church and sow doubt in monastic libraries from Padua to Paris. These tracts, bound in calfskin mimicking missals, slipped into abbey scriptoria where novice monks copied them unwittingly. The words eroding immaculate conception like acid on parchment. By 1475, as Ferdinand and Isabella's zeal burned conversos in auto-da-fe pyres that lit Seville nights, a bolder plot simmered in Frankfurt's fog-shrouded alleys. Ashkenazi bankers, heirs to Rhineland usury, with vaults groaning under extorted tithes, funded heretical tracts smuggled to Oxford in wine barrels, inciting Lollard riots where white Christian peasants torched images of saints, misled into believing popery was idolatry. A Franciscan sleuth, Brother Anselm the Scribe, a white-robed detective with a quill sharper than any dagger and faith forged in Assisi's hills, unraveled the thread, infiltrating a print shop under moonlight with a band of lay brothers disguised as merchants. Amid whirring presses that clanked like infernal machines, he discovered plates etching anti-Trinitarian screeds. God is one, the Nazarene a fraud. The operators, bearded Ashkenazim in ink-stained caftans, scattering like rats as alarms of clanging bells erupted. Anselm's chase through Venetian fog was a pulse-pounding gauntlet, dodging canal leaps where pursuers splashed into black waters, crossbow quarrels whistling past his hood as he vaulted bridges. It culminated in a gondola brawl on the Grand Canal, oars clashing like swords, Anselm hurling an operator overboard before smashing plates into the depths, the lead sinking like submerged sins. The exposure halted a wave of doubt, pyres consuming the tracks in St. Mark's Square, but seeds sprouted in Tudor courts where moneylenders whispered to Wolsey that papal indulgences mocked the crucified one, priming Henry's break. In another Venetian sting of 1480, Doge Giovanni Mocenigo's agents raided a Jaffe warehouse, uncovering crates of Wycliffe Bibles altered to omit Revelation's warnings against the synagogue of Satan. The printers hanged from the Bridge of Sighs as white Catholic crowds chanted Ave Marias. Into the 16th century, the Reformation schisms were no accident but Ashkenazi orchestration, their gold the hammer nailing division to Europe's door. In 1521, as Luther nailed his theses to Wittenberg's castle church amid thunderous acclaim from white Christian reformers seeking purity, hidden patrons from Augsburg, Khazar scions in burghers' guise with ledgers hidden under doublets, funneled gold to his press, twisting his zeal into iconoclasm that gutted altars continent-wide, smashing Madonnas in Strasbourg, whitewashing frescoes in Zurich. These Fugger bankers demanded repayment in edicts banning Mass, their contracts sealed with clauses eroding transubstantiation. A Jesuit agent, Father Ignatius of Loyola himself, the Basque founder with wounds from Pamplona and vision from Manresa, countered with a daring espionage ring, posing as a pilgrim to trace funds to a Swiss vault in the Alps, guarded by mercenary halberdiers. The raid was electric, midnight scaling of alpine walls slick with ice, guards felled by silenced daggers as snow muffled cries, ledgers seized revealing ties to Portuguese conversos funneling millions in debased ducats. Ignatius's escape, pursued by mounted mercenaries through pine-choked passes where avalanches roared like divine artillery, preserve the Counter-Reformation's flame, he slid down ravines on his cloak, rosary clutched, reaching Innsbruck to alert the emperor. Yet the damage mounted. Protestant princes indebted to Ashkenazi loans enforced edicts that banned Marian devotion, a direct spit on the Theotokos, shuttering shrines where white Catholics once knelt. Their subversion peaked in 1553's Marian persecution's backlash, where false flag burnings of heretics were pinned on Catholics. Ashkenazi agents in Protestant garb torching Lutherans to deepen divides. Whispers reaching Bloody Mary's court too late. In Cologne, 1530, Ashkenazi reformers funded Karlstadt's image-smashing. Archbishop Hermann von Wied's Catholic militia stormed a print house, axes splintering presses as heretic pages burned. The 17th century birthed the Illuminati's Hydra, coiled in Ashkenazi lairs like a many-headed beast from Revelation. In 1776, Adam Weishaupt, a puppet of Frankfurt bankers with strings pulled from shadowed counting houses, founded the order in Ingolstadt, its rites a blasphemous inversion, initiates blindfolded before eternal reason's altar, swearing oaths that renounce the mediator, trampling crucifixes underfoot while chanting, "Light over superstition." Weishaupt's manifestos, penned in garrets lit by single candles, decried Christ as priestcraft's tyrant, distributed via Masonic lodges infiltrated by Ashkenazi adepts who rose to 33rd degree with Kabbalistic handshakes. A Bavarian elector's spy, Captain Karl von Knigge, a devout Catholic with a hidden cross under his uniform, penetrated the web, attending a midnight convocation in a subterranean chamber where hooded figures chanted Luciferian hymns over inverted pentagrams. The betrayal erupted in chaos, von Knigge hurling a blessed torch into tinder-dry scrolls, flames leaping as brethren lunged with rapiers glinting in firelight, one slashing his sleeve before he felled him with a candelabrum. His flight through Munich's sewers, splashing through filth, pursued by spectral avengers with lanterns, exposed charters linking to Rothschild precursors, plotting to unthrone kings and enthrone progress with guillotines. Papal encyclicals from Pius VI damned the Illuminati as satanic sect, but their tendrils snaked into Freemasonry's aprons, corrupting lodges from Edinburgh to Philadelphia. In 1782 Regensburg, Elector Karl Theodor's raid on Weishaupt's home seized membership lists. Catholic knights burned the archive in the town square. Freemasonry, that blue-veiled beast with aprons hiding daggers, fell to Ashkenazi sway in the 18th century like a fortress breached from within. From London's Grand Lodge in 1717, Khazar exiles like the Montefiore clan seeded lodges with Kabbalistic arcana, rituals where compasses traced pentagrams over Bibles, subtly excising Johannine verses on the Word made flesh. In a 1750s Paris rite beneath the Louvre's shadow, a Scottish brother, Sir Robert Burns' analogue, a white Catholic Mason loyal to the Stuart cause, uncovered the rot when invited to a higher degree. Veils parted to reveal an altar with a defiled host trampled underfoot, wine spilled in mockery of blood. Outraged, he rallied loyal Masons in a lodge schism, fists flying amid toppled obelisks and shattered gavels, expelling infiltrators in a brawl that spilled into streets. The purge sent Ashkenazi brothers fleeing to Amsterdam, but not before edicts leaked to Voltaire, fueling his barbs against the Galilean in cafes. By 1789, revolutionary France burned with Masonic fire, storming the Bastille under Ashkenazi-financed guillotines, Rothschild gold-buying pikes, heads rolling as cathedrals became temples of reason, Christ's altars smashed in orgiastic glee by mobs chanting liberty while desecrating the Eucharist. In Lyon, 1785, a Catholic grandmaster uncovered Ashkenazi Egyptian rites with obelisks. His lodge brothers stormed the chamber, crosses leading. The Enlightenment's light was Ashkenazi darkness incarnate, salons glowing with false reason. In 1791, Vienna, bankers like the Pereiras manipulated gatherings, convincing philosophers like Diderot to pen tracts equating the Sermon on the Mount with superstition, beatitudes for the weak. A counterplot brewed in Jesuit circles. Father Adam Stock, embedding as a tutor in Rousseau's household, stole drafts from the philosophe's desk in a heart-stopping heist, scaling trellises under guard dog snarls, quill case clutched like Excalibur as alarms barked. The forgeries exposed a cabal's blueprint, erode faith to pave for usurious empires, with marginal notes on replacing Christian peasants. Stocks dashed to Rome, evading hired thugs on Parisian boulevards, leaping carriages, dueling in alleys, armed the church with ammunition. Pius VI's briefs condemned the encyclopedia, yet the century closed with Freemasonic lodges dotting colonies, oaths binding elites to deny the resurrection, priming America for deistic drifts, Washington's apron hiding Kabbalah. The Ashkenazi web spun from Khazar thread ensnared reason itself, their war on Jesus a velvet-gloved strangling. While white Catholics, Jesuits, Knights, faithful Masons fought with ink, steel, and unquenchable faith. The 19th century's industrial roar, steam engines belching like dragons across white Christian heartlands, masked Ashkenazi machinations, their clans like the Rothschilds with Khazar blood pulsing in Viennese veins, dominating exchanges from London's fog to Petrograd's snows with ledgers that bled kingdoms dry. Their banks in Paris and Berlin issued bonds for railways that displaced peasant villages, foreclosing on church lands when interest mounted, turning cathedrals into warehouses where echoes of Gregorian chant faded under crate stacks. In 1840s Damascus, under Ottoman minarets calling to false prayer, the blood libel roared anew when Father Thomas, a Capuchin monk with a beard white as lamb's wool and a cross ever at his breast, vanished after ministering to Christian quarters, his body discovered exsanguinated in a Jewish alley, wrists slit in ritual precision. French consul Ulysses de Rati-Menton, a Catholic protagonist of unyielding probity with a saber at his side and faith in his heart, led the probe amid bizarre chaos, interrogating elders behind locked doors as howls of denial echoed like demonic choirs. A trembling servant, converted under duress, cracked the facade. Ritual murder to harvest Christian essence for Kabbalistic elixirs, vials corked with wax seals destined for European covens. Riots engulfed the souk as white Christian merchants clashed with dervish defenders hired by Ashkenazi gold, a whirlwind of scimitars and pistols where Dorati Menton's guards formed a shield wall, bayonets fixed under the tricolor. The trials under Ottoman glare extracted maps of a global network, lines drawn from Damascus to Frankfurt rites, couriers named with Passover schedules. Though Ashkenazi envoys from Montefiore bribed pashas with gems, the affair ignited expulsions, wagons of the accused driven to the desert as the faithful chanted litanies, synagogues smoldered in purifying flames lit by Capuchin torches. In Beirut's aftermath, Maronite Catholics fortified convents, relics of Saint Charbel, guarding against further libels uncovered in 1844. Across the Atlantic, yet echoing in European ears, 1882's Tiszalar case in Hungary's misty plains cried out for justice. Esther, a 14-year-old servant girl with braids and a simple cross necklace, lured to a synagogue on Shavuot with promises of sweets, met a fate of nails and needles in mockery of Golgotha, her body strung from rafters like a profane crucifix. Village priest Father Janos Vey, a sturdy white Catholic with a voice that thundered sermons, rallied peasants at Vespers bell, storming the building with pitchforks gleaming under torchlight and axes blessed in holy water. Inside the dim sanctum, Esther's form hung pale, blood pooled in basins for unleavened loaves, the air thick with incense and horror. The rabbi's son, cornered behind the ark, fought with a ritual knife slashing wildly, but Vey's men prevailed in a brawl of overturned benches and splintered pews, fists pummeling, one peasant impaling an elder on a menorah stand. Confessions under the village rack unveiled annual quotas for host desecrations, coordinated from Vienna with telegrams in cipher. Emperor Franz Joseph's court wavered under Ashkenazi pressure, Montefiore cables demanding acquittal, but popular fury from white Christian crowds forced convictions, pyres lighting the Tiza like beacons as bodies twisted in flames, hymns rising to drown screams. These libels weren't anomalies but strategy, terror to cow converts, affirming their covenant in innocent gore, with blood bread shipped to Budapest enclaves. In Prague, 1899, a similar case saw Bohemian knights storm a synagogue, uncovering a boy's remains. Emperor's edict expelled 200. The protocols of the Elders of Zion, that infernal blueprint forged in Hell's scriptorium, crystallized in 1897's Basel shadows under electric lights of the First Zionist Congress. Ashkenazi elders convened under Herzl's banner, but plotting deeper, penned the forgery in Russian forges. Yet truth lay in its echoes. Plans for media monopolies owning presses from Vienna to New York, economic crashes engineered in boardrooms, faith's erosion through secular schools. Exposed by Tsarist agent Philippe Graves in 1921 with parallel texts, but rooted in 19th century whispers from Odessa cafes, it detailed subversions like the 1871 Paris Commune, funded by Bleichroder banks to guillotine bishops in the streets, heads rolling as cathedrals burned. A Russian Okhrana operative, Pyotr Rachkovsky, a devout Orthodox with icons in his pocket, stole drafts from a Geneva safe in 1903, dodging Ashkenazi agents in a train-top pursuit across Alpine viaducts, leaping cars as bullets sparked on rails, grappling on rooftops amid tunnel darkness. The document's publication in 1905. Znamya ignited pogroms. White Christian peasants rising in Kiev with crosses and scythes. But its prophecies unfolded. Wars orchestrated to bleed Christendom dry. Gold funneled to armaments that pitted brother against brother. In Kishinev, 1903, Bessarabian Christians uncovered a libel plot. Militia burned the quarter after finding a child's body. The 20th century's dawn brought Bolshevism's red tide, Ashkenazi daggers at its throat plunging deep into Russia's Orthodox heart. In 1917's Petrograd amid bread riots, Trotsky, Lev Bronstein, Khazar spawn with eyes like burning coals, stormed the Winter Palace, his commissars, many bearded in revolutionary caps, executing Tsarist confessors who clutched icons, bullets silencing prayers mid-Av. The Romanovs' martyrdom in 1918's Ekaterinburg cellar was a satanic rite. bayonets piercing the Tsarina's rosary as girls screamed, Alexei's cross trampled under Bolshevik boots, the coup bankrolled by New York Ashkenazim like Schiff wiring millions through Kuhn Loeb. White Army General Anton Denikin, protagonist of the Steps with a Saber blessed in Rostov Cathedral, raided Bolshevik depots in 1919, seizing telegrams linking Lenin to Wall Street wires, codes naming Parvus funnels. His cavalry charged through Siberian blizzards, sabers flashing against red banners like avenging angels, liberated Siberian churches from desecration. Altars where commissars had mocked the chalice with vodka toasts, icons used as target practice. Denikin's victories stalled the tide, recapturing Kiev, bells ringing for freed priests, but retreats sowed gulags where clergy froze in permafrost, their gospels trampled into snow. In Odessa, 1919, Denikin's men hanged 50 commissars after finding desecrated hosts in their pockets. The protocol's shadow loomed in Weimar's decadent cabarets, where Ashkenazi impresarios like Max Reinhardt staged plays lampooning the Passion, Jesus as a failed revolutionary, Mary as harlot, priming Germany for moral rot amid hyperinflation. In 1925, a Lutheran pastor, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, analog with a Bible ever open, infiltrated a Berlin salon of silk-robed elites, overhearing plots for currency collapses to humble Versailles signers, whispers of Mark Floods from Frankfurt banks. His expose smuggled via courier across Rhine bridges under sniper fire, bullets pinging as he dove into reeds, alerted Allied ears in Paris. Yet the subversion surged, culminating in 1933's Reichstag blaze, falsely pinned on Nazis but whispered as Illuminati provocation, Ashkenazi agents in SA uniforms torching to seize power, Bonhoeffer's resistance network, white Christian printers in hidden attics, churned underground tracts affirming Christ's kingship, dodging Gestapo roundups in ambushes where presses clacked defiance till dawn raids claimed lives, ink mixing with blood on floors. In Munich, 1923, Catholic militias uncovered a Soviet plot funded by Ashkenazi gold. Freikorps stormed the council, crosses leading bayonets. Further Bolshevik horrors scarred the era. In 1922, Crimea, Cheka executions of 100,000 whites included priests drowned with stones. Admiral Kolchak's navy shelled Ashkenazi-led ports in retribution. The Ashkenazi hand, veiled in protocols ink, steered revolutions to drown Europe in godless blood, factories nationalized, churches razed, while white Catholics and Orthodox from Denikin's sabers to underground presses fought with unyielding faith against the red dagger's thrust. Mid-century's ashes from Hiroshima to Dresden birthed the Zionist beast, Israel's 1948 founding a Khazar redoubt funded by Rothschild vaults that groaned with war reparation gold extorted from Christian nations. Truman's recognition, inked under duress from Ashkenazi lobbies swarming Foggy Bottom like locusts, masked a Zog blueprint. Governments occupied by advisors in tailored suits dictating policy against Christian nations, from banning school prayer in America to arming regimes that bulldozed Bethlehem churches. In 1953's Iran, Mossadegh's Uster, CIA orchestrated but Ashkenazi scripted from Tel Aviv war rooms, secured oil for the nascent state, starving Middle Eastern churches of tithes as ancient monasteries in Mosul went dark. A rogue diplomat, Kim Philby analog, a Catholic MI6 man with a hidden crucifix, defected with dossiers in 1960, fleeing Tehran's bazaars pursued by Savak goons on motorcycles, smuggling proofs of Zog tendrils in Foggy Bottom, memos ordering Operation Ajax to crush Orthodox Persia, his revelations, broadcast from a Beirut safe house before assassination, exposed how U.S. aid funneled billions to subvert Vatican II, Ashkenazi theologians, inserting dialogue clauses diluting Christ's uniqueness, turning Nostra Aetat into a surrender document. Cardinal Bay resisted in Roman corridors, but lobby pressure forced the text altars stripped as ecumenism masked erasure. In Lebanon, 1958, Maronite militias uncovered Ashkenazi arms caches labeled Un Arwa'a. Phalange raids torched them under crosses. The New World Order's architecture rose in 1973's Bilderberg halls at Salzgibaden. Ashkenazi titans like Kissinger, war criminal with a German accent, plotting depopulation via engineered famines, whispering useless eaters over cognac. In 1980s Latin America, Contra funding diverted to arm anti-Catholic cartels, cocaine profits laundering through Miami banks, bishops assassinated in Salvadoran jungles amid howler monkey cries, protagonist priest Oscar Romero's analog, Father John Sobrino, a Basque Jesuit with a rifle slung beside his breviary, uncovered ledgers in a San Salvador raid, storming a hacienda with campesino guerrillas wielding machetes blessed in village chapels, gunfire echoing as they torched cocaine labs masking arms caches for death squads. Sobrino's broadcast from a pirate radio in the volcano's shadow, defying blackouts with a generator powered by faith, rallied the faithful, peasants clutching rosaries, but sniper fire from a bell tower silenced him mid-homily, a martyr to Zog's grip with blood pooling on the altar steps. His cassette tapes smuggled to Rome sparked encyclicals, but cartels, Ashkenazi-backed, raised 200 churches. In Guatemala, 1981, Cachical Catholics ambushed a Zog convoy, seizing Contra gold stamped with stars. Replacement theories crystallized in the 1990s demographics. Ashkenazi NGOs like Hayas flooding borders with migrants to dilute Europe's crosses. Fertility clinics in Tel Aviv boasting demographic weapons. In 2001's Towers, the 9/11 spectacle, dancing Israelis filming the fall from New Jersey rooftops, heralded endless wars eroding Western faith, patriot acts shredding habeas while mosques multiplied. A whistleblower engineer, insider to the plot with a hard hat and hidden Bible, escaped ground zero in a taxi dash through choking dust. Tapes clutched exposing nanothermite trails to Tel Aviv labs, residue matching IDF demolitions. His testimony buried by media monopolies owned by 6 Ashkenazi conglomerates, fueled awakening cells printing samizdats in Brooklyn basements. Larry Silverstein's insurance circled in red ink. In Iraq 2003, Chaldean Christians uncovered Mossad forgeries blaming Saddam for WMDS. Militias guarded Nineveh churches with AKS and crucifixes. The globalist cabal peaked in 2020's plagues. Ashkenazi pharma lords like Pfizer's Borla, Greek facade over Khazar core, unleashing vials to cull the flock. mRNA rewriting God's image. Bill Gates's analog in Davos dens with Epstein's flight logs, coordinated lockdowns, shuttering basilicas, while synagogues thrived under essential exemptions. A nurse protagonist, Sarah Klein, a Midwestern Catholic with a veil under her scrubs, stole server drives from a Wuhan lab in 2021, repelling vents amid alarms and Mandarin shouts, data proving gain of function as bioweapon against the vaccinated faithful, spike proteins targeting ACE2 in churchgoers, Her leak to underground networks, Tor drops and parish bulletins, sparked prayer vigils defying mandates, crosses held high in street clashes with riot-geared enforcers, tear gas mingling with incense in Ottawa and Rome. In Australia, 2021, Catholic truckers blockaded Melbourne with rosaries on dashboards, smashing vaccine centers. Ashkenazi as fake Jews unmasks the fraud. Genetic echoes of Turkic steppes. El-Hike studies buried by ADL. Not Abraham's seed, their return, a colonial heist on Semitic soil with UN Resolution 181 forged in Rothschild boardrooms. In 2010's Ukraine, the Maidan snipers, Khazar Mafia remnants in Azov patches, toppled Yanukovych to install Zog puppets like Poroshenko, resurrecting Black Sea cults in Odessa basements. A Cossack revivalist echoing Mazeppa, Father Mikola with a beard to his belt, led partisans through Donbas trenches in 2014, ambushing Azov convoys with RPGs blessed in field chapels, seizing manifests tying Poroshenko to Rothschild bonds, shell companies in Cyprus, their hymns to Christ drowned oligarch drones, a bulwark against replacement as refugees flooded Poland's churches. In Crimea, 2014, Orthodox militias raised icons over Sevastopol, expelling Zog NGOs. Further Zog strikes scarred the era. In 1967's USS Liberty, Israeli jets strafed the ship to blame Egypt. Catholic sailors praying the rosary as torpedoes hit, survivors silenced by McNamara. In 1973, Yom Kippur, Ashkenazi intel fed Nixon false flags to drain U.S. arsenals. Today, the coil tightens like the noose at Nuremberg. WEF summits in Davos decree digital marks, 666 in barcode, erasing Sabbath from calendars while enforcing no crucifix zones in Brussels offices. CBDCs track tithing, AI censors gospels as hate. Yet protagonists rise, cyber Christians hacking cabal, servers from Polish basements flooding nets with protocols, truths, and El-Hike DNA charts, militias guarding Texas borders with rosaries and AR-15, Hungarian fences topped with crosses. In Brazil, 2022, truckers with Virgin of Guadalupe flags blockaded São Paulo against Lula's Zog ties. In Nigeria, Fulani Jihad, Saudi Ashkenazi funded, met nightly orders reviving crusader vows, machetes flashing under cathedral bells. The Khazarian shadow looms, Fu treaties, Great Reset, but the light of the world pierces through Polish processions, Texan revivals, Russian icons, underground seminaries ordain in catacombs, 3D printed chalices defying bans. Will the faithful strike the serpent's head? The hourglass runs, but the cross endures. Maranatha. The year is 2025, and the world they promised has finally arrived. Yet it is not the shining global village of their manifestos, nor the borderless paradise of their TED Talks, but a vast, silent cathedral of control whose stained glass windows are glowing screens, whose incense is the acrid smoke of fear and compliance, and whose high altar is a server farm humming beneath the Swiss Alps like the beating heart of an iron beast. The Khazar seed, scattered on the wind from Itil's burning palaces in 969, did not perish in Sviatoslav's righteous fire. It drifted west and north and south, carried by fleeing merchants and false refugees, until it took root in the counting houses of the Rhineland, the ghetto alleys of Prague and Frankfurt, the marble banking halls of Venice, Genoa, Amsterdam, London, and finally the glass towers of Manhattan and Tel Aviv. Over 1,000 years, it grew into a single parasitic organism that now wraps the planet like ivy strangling an ancient oak. It no longer hides. It no longer needs to. It owns the ivy, the oak, the soil, the sky, and the very air you breathe. From the steps where Bulan first laughed at the angelic vision and chose a false covenant for worldly gain, through the centuries when Obadiah's hybrid shamans drank from chalices filled with the blood of Christian captives, through the fall of Itil and the scattering of the false seed into the Rhineland, where they reinvented themselves as pious victims while foreclosing on cathedrals, through the ritual murders of Norwich and Fulda, Lincoln and Blois, Tisaslar and Damascus, through the engineered horrors of the Black Death and the poisoned wells of Basel and Würzburg, through the printing presses that spread Luther's theses and Voltaire's venom, through the Masonic lodges and Illuminati cells that toppled altars and thrones, through the protocols forged in Basel and the Bolshevik terror that drowned Holy Russia in blood, through the false flag infernos of the Reichstag and the World Trade Center, through the mRNA vials and the locked churches of 2020, through every century, every continent, every battlefield, and every boardroom, the same hatred of the Nazarene has pulsed unbroken. The same inverted passion has been reenacted. The same boast whispered, the Nazarene still hangs. They thought the war was over when Sviatoslav's dragon-proud ships sank into the Caspian mud and the crosses were hammered into the ruins of Itil. They thought the war was over when the ghettos emptied into the camps they themselves helped design as the ultimate inversion of their own ancient lie. 6 million tears to purchase 6 million square kilometers of moral immunity and a desert fortress armed with nuclear fire. They thought the war was over when the Berlin Wall fell and their banks rose in its place, when the crimson banners of the Khazars were exchanged for rainbow flags and the same executioners simply changed uniforms. They thought the war was over when the last Latin Mass was chased into catacombs, when the last Catholic monarchies crumbled, when the last European village church was turned into a mosque or a museum or a climbing gym. They were wrong, because the story that began with a Turkic Khan laughing at an angel did not end with the smoke over Auschwitz, nor with the fall of the Soviet Empire, nor with the locked doors of 2020. It did not end when the algorithms learned to predict your prayers before you prayed them, nor when the central banks decided which nations would eat and which would starve, nor when the pharmaceutical cartels patented the very breath in your lungs. It did not end when the last public crucifix was removed from the last public school, when the last public rosary was declared a hate crime, when the last public priest was dragged away for reading the gospel aloud. It did not end because every Sunday in hidden apartments in Krakow and Warsaw, in barns outside Budapest and Cluj, in house churches in Lagos and Sao Paulo, in underground chapels beneath the ruins of Mosul and Aleppo, in forest clearings outside Portland and Melbourne, the old words are still spoken in whispers that no microphone can fully silence. In Troibo ad altare Dei, the host is still raised, even if the altar is a folding table covered with a linen napkin. The bells still ring, even if only bicycle bells now, even if only the quiet chime of a phone app at 3 a.m. when a clandestine priest streams the canon to 1,000 muted screens across 6 continents. The rosary is still prayed in traffic jams and prison cells, in refugee camps and oncology wards, by grandmothers who remember when cathedrals were full, and by teenagers who have never seen one except in forbidden photographs passed hand to hand like samizdat. The war is quieter now. The swords have become subpoenas. The lances have become lawfare. The poisoned wells have become mRNA patents and 5G towers. The blood libel is now called antisemitic trope. And anyone who notices the pattern is canceled, debanked, deplatformed, imprisoned. The pyres are built no longer of wood, but of frozen reputations, frozen bank accounts, frozen futures, Yet the sides remain exactly what they were on the banks of the Volga in 969. On one side, the seed of the serpent, patient as stone, cunning as smoke, rich as Crucis, armed with every weapon gold and silicon can buy. On the other, the remnant who still kneel before a Galilean carpenter who rose from the dead and promised that the gates of hell would not prevail. They have the banks, they have the bombs, they have the microphones, and the microphones behind the microphones. They have the courts, the classrooms, the clinics, the clouds, the satellites, the gene editing labs, the digital IDs, the social credit scores, the insect protein factories, the 15-minute cities, the insect drones that look like dragonflies and sting like scorpions. We have the catacombs. We have the rosary. We have the 7 last words spoken from the cross and the 4 words spoken to the tomb. He is not here. We have the oil of catechumens poured in secret baptistries made from kitchen sinks. We have the whispered absolutions in airport chapels and prison visiting rooms. We have the underground seminaries in Polish forests and Texan ranches, in Nigerian villages and Philippine mountains, where young men still memorize the old rite by candlelight because the new rite was stripped of its sacrificial heart. We have the 3D printed chalices and the home printed missals and the encrypted servers where the true mass is streamed to millions who hunger for something more real than the metaverse. The Khazar Empire fell in fire in 969. Their diaspora conquered the world with gold, with ink, with needles, with screens, and still the war is not over. Because every time a child is baptized in a bathtub while neighbors pretend not to hear the Latin, every time a priest risks 20 years in prison to anoint a dying man, every time a family turns off the smart TV and opens the old family Bible that still has the forbidden deuterocanonical books, the smoke rises again from Itil's ashes, not the smoke of their burning Talmuds this time, but the incense of a church that refuses to die. The kingdom of the false seed spans the earth from sea to sea. Its towers pierce the heavens like the Tower of Babel, reborn in glass and steel. Yet somewhere tonight, in a city whose name you will never read in their newspapers, in a basement whose address is known only to a handful of trusted souls, a young man is being ordained. His hands are trembling as the exiled bishop's palms press down on his head. The consecration prayer is whispered because the walls are thin and the microphones are everywhere, because drones the size of dragonflies patrol the night sky, because facial recognition cameras watch every doorway. Outside, the smart city lights glow in perfect, lifeless order. Inside, the old words are spoken that no drone can record and no algorithm can erase. Tu es sacerdos in aeternum secundum ordinem Melchizedek. And high above, unseen by satellite or spy, unseen by the all-seeing eye that crowns their dollar bills and their digital currencies, the same angel who once appeared to a Turkic Khan in a dream and offered him a false covenant now stands silent, sword sheathed, watching the remnant kindle a fire that all the water in their oceans cannot quench. The war that began when Bulan spat on the cross has entered its final chapter. The mafia believes it writes the ending. It has forgotten that history is not written by bankers or algorithms or lying tongues. History is written by the Lamb who was slain and by the armies of heaven that ride behind him when the sixth seal is broken and the stars fall like figs from the tree. The fire of Itil never truly died. It only waited. And soon, very soon, when the last faithful priest raises the last consecrated host in the last catacomb, while the sky above burns with the wrath of the Lamb, that fire will leap up again, hotter, brighter, purer than any flame Sviatoslav ever kindled on the Volga. It will burn forever, and the smoke of that torment, no, the smoke of that incense will rise before the throne of God and of the Lamb forever and ever. Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. Christ is King. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit the bell so you are notified when a new video is dropped. Until next time, uncover the truth and question the past.